Vietnam had defeated France, defeated the United States, and unified the country. By 1979, it was the most combat-hardened military on Earth. In February 1979, China launched its largest land invasion since the Korean War. More than 200,000 troops, 600 tanks, and a front 450 miles wide. 27 days of fighting, an estimated 25,000 to 30,000 Chinese dead, more than the total United States losses during the first 4 years of the Vietnam War. This is not a story about who won. It is a story about what the Vietnamese had become and what it cost China to find out. The horror that follows is not the kind taught in schools. Deng Xiaoping did not hide his intentions. In a closed-door Politburo meeting on February 15, 1979, he described Vietnam as the child getting naughty, it is time he got spanked. The phrase was not just for effect, it became the guiding logic for a campaign meant to be a short, sharp lesson. Chinese state media repeated the phrase like a mantra. The People's Liberation Army, still recovering from the chaos of the Cultural Revolution, was given a deadline. Seize key objectives in 9 days, deliver a humiliation, and withdraw before the Soviets could react. Internal PLA documents, later declassified, spelled out the timetable in chilling detail. Lang Son, Chao Bang, and Lao Kai were to fall within the first week. Victory slogans were printed in advance for a 10-day celebration. Political officers drilled the message into every rank. This would be a punitive expedition, not a protracted war. Every element of the plan radiated confidence. 200,000 troops, 600 tanks, over 2,000 artillery pieces. The campaign was even named for its brevity. A 3-week operation with an internal deadline of 9 days to break Vietnamese resistance. The lesson was supposed to be swift, the pain overwhelming, the outcome certain. But behind the slogans, a different kind of pressure built. The 9-day clock was not just a plan, it was an ultimatum. Senior commanders were warned that any delay would be seen as political failure. The doctrine, shaped by politics as much as by strategy, left no room for uncertainty. The world's largest standing army was about to discover what happens when war is dictated by a schedule and when the enemy refuses to follow the script. People's Liberation Army columns moved out from the border at first light, armored vehicles grinding forward behind banners and political officers reciting the timetable. Within hours, the plan began to unravel. The approach to Chao Bang, mapped for a rapid breakthrough, became an exposed bottleneck. Infantry and tanks bunched up on the single narrow road, hemmed in by karst ridges, unable to deploy. By the second day, the advance had ground to a halt. 48 hours of confusion, stalled armor, and mounting casualties followed. Field reports from the 41st Army logged destroyed Type 59 tanks littering the approaches, hit by RPG-7 teams firing from windows, ditches, and tunnel mouths. Engineers struggled to clear debris as anti-tank traps and mines claimed vehicle after vehicle. Ammunition ran low, and medics filled out casualty tags faster than they could clear the wounded. Inside every forward battalion's kit, a white burial shroud, standard issue for the campaign, became a grim reminder. Political officers tasked with keeping morale high now found themselves overseeing impromptu burial details. The shroud, meant as a badge of honor and warning, became a necessity. Vietnamese militia, many with no more than a decade-old French submachine gun or a captured M16, held their ground from reinforced bunkers and vanished into tunnels as soon as the artillery lifted. The People's Liberation Army's 9-day schedule was already in ruins. Supply logs from the front recorded delays, lost vehicles, and missing units. Commanders radioed for reinforcements, but the roads behind them were jammed with wreckage and bodies. The world's largest standing army, equipped for a textbook offensive, had been stopped cold by a border defense system built to outlast any timetable. The question now was not how quickly the People's Liberation Army could advance, but how long it could endure the attrition. The secret to Vietnamese survivability in 1979 was buried deep beneath the surface, literally. After Dien Bien Phu and the American War, Vietnamese engineers codified a doctrine of underground defense that became the backbone of the northern border. Declassified construction manuals from the late 1970s specify tunnel depths of 12 to 15 meters, reinforced with layers of concrete and salvaged steel designed to withstand the overpressure of 152mm artillery shells. Every kilometer of tunnel was a calculation, deep enough to shrug off the opening barrage, shallow enough for fighters to re-emerge and strike. Survey teams mapped the karst topography with precision, choosing sites where the limestone ridges forced valleys into natural funnels, some as narrow as 95 meters near Friendship Pass, never more than 300 meters wide along the main invasion corridors. These valleys dictated everything. The only roads ran like veins through the rock, forcing Chinese armored columns into single-file formations. Vietnamese engineers anticipated this, embedding tunnel exits and firing positions at intervals that matched the valley's choke points, often just 180 meters apart. In the Dongdang sector alone, 12 kilometers of interconnected passages linked 68 secondary nodes, each with its own command chamber, medical bay, and ammunition locker. Escape routes led to depressions or abandoned mining pits, concealed beneath false stones or dense brush, making detection almost impossible under fire. Blueprints from 1979 show a lattice of ventilation shafts spaced every 150 to 200 meters, each camouflaged against aerial reconnaissance. Communication cables ran along the tunnel ceilings protected by mortar, connecting frontline bunkers to rear command posts. In the event of a breach, acetylene charges could collapse a tunnel section in minutes, sealing off the enemy while leaving adjacent nodes intact. The physical constraints of the land, valley width, tunnel depth, and the density of nodes became force multipliers. Every meter of ground was engineered to channel, trap, and bleed an invader, turning geography into a weapon that no timetable or doctrine could overcome. Vietnamese border militia carried a toolkit that defied expectations. The standard issue rifle might be an AK-47, a battered MAT-49 left over from the French, or a captured American M16 with a single magazine of mixed ammunition. But the real threat came from the anti-tank teams. Three-man crews with RPG-2s and RPG-7s, weapons that could punch through the side armor of a Type 59 tank at under 200 meters. Each team operated with a simple rule: don't fire until the enemy is close enough to guarantee a kill, then vanish before the return barrage. Improvised mines and explosive charges filled the gaps between formal defenses. Old artillery shells, plastic explosives, even unexploded American ordnance from earlier wars were dug up, wired, and buried along choke points. Some mines were triggered by tripwires strung across jungle trails, others used pressure plates fashioned from scrap metal. In the valleys near Dongdang, entire stretches of road became invisible killing fields. Chinese engineers recorded dozens of vehicles lost to mines before ever seeing a defender. Communication was as vital as firepower. Portable radios, often hand-cranked, sometimes jury-rigged from civilian sets, linked bunkers, tunnel exits, and ambush teams. This allowed for real-time coordination. An RPG team might signal for a mortar strike or call in reinforcements as soon as the enemy crossed a pre-sighted line. Night brought the most fearsome sorties. Under the cover of darkness, militia squads slipped through tunnel exits to lay fresh mines, set up new kill zones, or launch sudden attacks on stalled columns. Vietnamese logs from February 20th detail a night ambush near Lung Thiem, 2 RPG teams, 3 captured M16s, and a handful of homemade grenades destroyed 4 tanks and scattered an entire Chinese platoon. Every tool, every weapon, every booby trap reflected a doctrine built on asymmetry. The PLA's numerical advantage meant little when every meter of ground could explode beneath their feet, and every shadow might hide a militia crew ready to strike and disappear. The stage was set for the close-quarters horror of Dongdang, where the invaders would pay for every inch with blood and steel. Dongdang broke into 6 phases, each tightening the trap around the advancing columns. At dawn, over 500 Chinese guns thundered, but Vietnamese defenders, buried 12 meters deep, emerged almost unscathed. The narrow road, just 200 meters wide, funneled tanks and infantry into a kill zone exposed from 3 sides. Anti-tank teams struck at close range, stalling the lead vehicles. Engineers declared the route clear, only to be ambushed by squads erupting from tunnel exits 200 meters behind the supposed front. Every People's Liberation Army push triggered a counterattack from the rear, forcing units to fight both ways. By day 6, the 55th Army's logs showed over 1,200 dead, nearly 4,000 wounded, and more than 60 armored vehicles lost. Dongdang was not taken. It was left behind. Chinese High Command convened in the aftermath, sifting through casualty lists and shattered assumptions. Internal People's Liberation Army reports, stamped confidential, catalogued failures in combined arms tactics, supply chain breakdowns, and the paralysis of junior officers forced to wait for orders while their units bled in the valleys. The 9-day timetable had collapsed into a month-long ordeal, with the disengagement order finally issued in the early hours of March 16th. Senior officers, some facing quiet demotion, admitted in after-action memos that the campaign's doctrine, built on mass assaults and rigid schedules, was obsolete against a defender shaped by 30 years of continuous war. Vietnamese operational logs credited General Van Tien Dung's doctrine for turning tunnels, terrain, and militia into a single defensive organism. The lesson was brutal and lasting. The People's Liberation Army's post-war modernization drive traced its origins to the failures of 1979. The shock of withdrawal, not victory, became the war's legacy. Today, Vietnam's northern border remains scarred, littered with unexploded ordnance, mass graves, and the memories of a generation raised on siege. The humiliation of the PLA in 1979 still haunts Beijing's military doctrine. When societies adapt to endless war, even superpowers risk bleeding out in the shadows. Leave your thoughts below.